The real reason your guitar won't stay in tune probably isn't what you think it is. So I hear it so often. People will come in and they'll say their guitar is not staying in tune. And almost instinctively, the first thing that people think every time is, I need new tuners. The tuning machines are not doing their job. And truthfully, while tuning machines can affect tuning, certainly, most of the time I find that that's not really the main culprit. So let's start with what one of the most common issues I see personally here in the shop is people bring their guitars in. The main issue I find is that the tuning problem is happening before we even get to the tuners, and that the main culprit is actually the nut itself. So to explain this, as you're going to tune the string and you keep tuning it and you keep hearing the same note, but then all of a sudden you hear a pop, what happens is the string itself is actually getting stuck in the slot. So let me show you real quick kind of what caused that problem. What happens is the slot that is meant for the string to sit in is not filed out enough. And so if you're trying to get the string to move through the slot, but the slot is smaller than the string itself, the string thickness, then you're going to have the issue with it actually catching on the nut as you're pulling the tension this way. And not only is that going to not help with the tuning of it, but it also is very likely going to break your string at some point because it'll get caught on the nut and it'll snap the string. So it's another culprit of strings breaking on guitars. And this is actually very common on guitars, specifically with electric guitars. On the G string typically are not wound, but if you get wound strings on your G for an electric guitar, you're also very likely to have the same problem because the nut slot is not normally fitted for that kind of string. So essentially, if this is happening, again, the tuner can't even do its job. And so if you were to upgrade the tuners while having a nut problem, you're not going to notice any difference because you're not catching where the problem's first happening. To fix this problem, you're going to use files, and so we have a set of files up here from StewMac, and these are tools I use all the time. It's not necessarily something that the average player is going to use day in and day out, but again, if you're doing enough guitar work, if you got enough guitars at home, it's probably worth getting a set of files, whether it's StewMac or just a cheap set. The next very common reason is brand new strings. So you put new strings on the guitar, awesome. You sit it down for an hour and you come back and it's like, what the heck happened? Well, I can explain exactly what happens. When you put new strings on, they're not fully stretched out, and so you're putting it from the bridge all the way to the top of the headstock through the tuners, but it still needs time to stretch out. And so every string is going to stretch out a little differently, a little unevenly, you could call it. What I do to get around this is as soon as I put new strings on and I'll tune it up, I will do what I call the floss method with my hands. And so essentially, I'm going to just floss the strings, and you're just literally, as you can see, you're pulling all the tension out of the strings. You are tightening it on both ends, and you're getting all and any slack that could possibly be in there. And this will solve the problem so fast. So then, once you've stretched them out and it's in tune, you can set it down, come back tomorrow. And when I come back tomorrow, it's still in tune. Well, maybe you have to tune it just a little bit, but another reason your guitar won't stay in tune is because of the neck and the saddle adjustments. Let me explain. So first, let's talk about the neck. The neck should be perfectly straight, if not maybe just a little bit of relief in there. But if you've got a valley like this, your neck is like this and the strings are straight, you're going to have a huge amount of space between the strings and the neck itself. And that's going to cause intonation problems. Just not how the neck is supposed to be. It's not how it's made to be. The other issue that I see often is if the saddle height is too high. If the saddle height is too high and the neck is straight, you're still going to have issues because if this saddle is sitting up, another quarter of an inch, that angle is going to create a really tall angle on the strings. And so again, just the high action itself, not only is it going to make it really hard to play, but even if you play it well, the intonation is just not going to it's not going to sound quite right, especially as you're getting up to the higher notes. So if you want to address those issues, the first thing you do with the neck is to adjust the truss rod. We have a video on this that we'll link up here. But if you want to, just real briefly, we'll show you the truss rod on this one is actually inside the sound hole. And so you'd use an Allen wrench to adjust that righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So if you've got a loose neck, you want to tighten it up to the right. And then the other issue with the saddle, if the saddle height is too high, what you need to do is you need to loosen up the strings, pop out the pins here. And typically what you'll do is you'll take the saddle and you can just use a piece of sandpaper, and you just want to sand that evenly. And you're just taking it down incrementally and testing it, putting it in see if that solved the issue, and if it didn't, take it back out. It can take some time, but be patient because it's worth it. The next reason your guitar won't stay in tune. And so I hate to say, guys, especially when we're first starting out, you know, we're still learning, and it's okay to say that maybe our technique just needs some work. So what I was trying to show you there is just that what we're doing there is we're actually bending the strings. We're playing too hard. You want to make sure you have even pressure down on the strings, like that. If my pressure starts to go sideways, you hear that? You gotta be careful. Again, proper technique is just making sure you're pressing down evenly on every string. And on that same note too, capos. Okay, so when you put the capo on, if you don't put it on right, you're gonna bend strings out of place. It's just not gonna sound good. So when you're going to capo, just make sure that you're very carefully just putting it all down gently, and the strings are not bending. Problem solved. So to answer the question, do bad tuners exist? Yes. Are they the main culprit most of the time? In my opinion, no. As you can tell, we've gone through a lot of different steps that kind of show there's a lot of things that can happen way before we get to the tuners. So just keep in mind, again, when you hear a tuning problem, don't have your mind just jump all the way to tuners right away. Make sure you go through this list first and see, is my technique off? Is my setup off? Is the nut not how it should be? Is it filed correctly? There's a lot of things we can address first before we go to. The other thing too is when you change out the tuners, it's not just the cost of the tuners, but it's the labor you're gonna have to pay someone to do that, because a lot of times you're gonna have to reroute the holes. Don't jump to the first most expensive fix. Let's think about things just a little bit more practically first. So in summary, if your guitar's not staying in tune, first, check the nut. Secondly, make sure the strings are stretched out after you change the strings. Third, make sure your guitar is set up right. And fourth, make sure you're playing with good technique. If you guys are into honest repair work and the thinking that goes behind it, then stick around. We got more content for you.